Someone is using you. You already know who. You call it loyalty. It isn't. It's fear, wearing loyalty's name so you don't have to look at what it actually is. Stay, and you'll know exactly what to do about it. Tonight. There's a name in your head right now. I'm not going to pretend I don't know that. It arrived before you finished reading the first line. It always does, because some part of you has been keeping score for longer than you've admitted. Maybe it's a friend who calls only when he needs something. Maybe it's a brother who has never once asked how you're carrying what you're carrying. Maybe it's someone closer than that, someone whose voice still does something to your chest, even now, even after everything they've taken without ever once turning around to see what it cost you. Think about the last time your phone lit up with their name. Notice what happened in your body before you even read the message, that small, automatic bracing, the way you already knew, somewhere beneath conscious thought, that whatever came next would ask something of you and give nothing back. You answered anyway. You always answer anyway. And afterward, in the quiet that followed, some part of you felt the familiar hollowness of having given something you didn't actually have left to give. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You already know. What I'm going to tell you is why you keep letting it happen, and why the reason has almost nothing to do with them, and everything to do with a story you were taught about yourself before you were old enough to argue with it. Here is the painful truth. The men who get used the most are rarely weak. That's the lie you've been told, and it's the reason you've never fixed this. Weak men run out of things to give quickly, and people stop coming back to them. You are not out of things to give. That's exactly the problem. You were taught, somewhere back in a childhood you don't examine closely enough, that your worth was tied to your usefulness. Maybe it was a parent who only noticed you when you achieved something, or helped with something, or made their life easier. Maybe it was learning early that love in your house came with conditions attached, quietly, never spoken aloud, but felt in every silence that followed a moment when you had nothing to offer. So you built a self around being useful. Reliable. The one who shows up. The one who never says no. And it worked, for a while. It even felt like love, because people kept choosing you, kept calling you, kept needing you. But usefulness and love are not the same thing. And a man who was never taught the difference will spend his whole life mistaking one for the other, giving and giving, waiting for the moment someone finally loves him for nothing, and never noticing that moment can't arrive, because he never stopped giving long enough to find out if it would. Here is the part that will sting, and I'd rather it sting now than let you keep avoiding it for another year. You have not actually been tested. Not once. Every relationship where you've made yourself endlessly useful has never had the chance to prove it would love you without that usefulness attached, because you never once stopped supplying it long enough to find out. You've been protecting yourself from an answer you're terrified might be no, by making sure the question never gets asked. Picture a well. Not a metaphor yet, just picture it. Stone walls, dark water, a bucket lowered again and again by people who never once ask if the water is running low. A well does not complain when it is drawn from. It simply gives, the way you have been trained to give, automatically, without protest, because protest was never modeled for you as something a good man does. But a well can run dry. And when it does, no one usually notices until they lower the bucket and it comes back up empty. That is where you are heading. Maybe you're already there. By the end of this, you will understand the exact Stoic distinction between loyalty and fear, a distinction almost no man is ever taught, and you will never again confuse the two. 9 lessons. Each one built to be felt, not just heard. If the painful truth I just named landed somewhere real, if you felt it in your chest rather than just heard it in your ears, comment, "I see it now," below. Not for me. So that when you come back to this video in 6 months, you'll remember the exact moment you stopped pretending you didn't already know. Lesson 1. Why the giver is always the first one used. It isn't complicated, and that's what makes it so hard to accept. People take what is offered. That's not cynicism, it's just the mechanics of human behavior, the same mechanics that govern water finding the lowest point in a landscape. If you have made yourself endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly willing to absorb inconvenience so someone else doesn't have to, you have not built a relationship. You have built a path of least resistance, and people, even good people, tend to walk the path that costs them the least. This is not about blaming the people who take from you. Some of them don't even know they're doing it. They've simply never been shown the bottom of your well, because you've never let them see it. You keep giving before it runs out, so the people around you have no reason to believe it ever could. Think of the friend who calls you at 11 at night, every time, only when something in his life has gone wrong. You've noticed the pattern. You've never said anything about it. You drive over anyway, you listen anyway, you stay until it's handled, and 3 weeks later, when something goes wrong in your life, the silence on the other end of that same relationship is deafening. This isn't a coincidence, and it isn't necessarily malice. It's simply the shape of a road you built yourself, one late-night drive at a time, and never once put up a sign telling anyone it had a limit. Epictetus taught his students to separate the world into 2 piles, what is within your control, and what is not. Their willingness to take is not within your control. Your willingness to keep offering is the only lever you have ever actually held. You thought the problem was them. Until life taught you the problem was the absence of a wall. Not because you owe no one anything, but because a man who gives without limit isn't generous. He's just afraid of what happens the moment he stops. That fear is exactly where we're going next. Lesson 2. The fear beneath, I don't want to be the bad guy. Say it out loud to yourself, honestly, the next time you feel that familiar tightness in your chest before you say no to someone. That tightness isn't kindness. It's dread, the specific, ancient dread of being disliked by someone whose approval you decided, long ago, you couldn't survive without. Somewhere along the way, you learned that conflict meant danger. Maybe a household where anger was unpredictable taught you to keep the peace at any cost. Maybe you learned that being agreeable was the safest way to be loved in a world where love felt conditional and scarce. Whatever the origin, the result is the same. You built an entire adult identity around avoiding a feeling you first had as a child, and you still let that child make your decisions. This is the part most men refuse to look at, because it means admitting the boundary they never set wasn't kindness. It was self-protection dressed up as generosity, so it wouldn't have to look like fear in the mirror. Think about the last group plan you didn't actually want to be part of, the trip, the favor, the weekend you gave away without ever once considering saying no was an option available to you. You said yes before you'd even finished thinking about it, the way a hand pulls back from heat before the brain finishes registering pain. That's not generosity. That's a reflex, trained into you by a nervous system that learned, a long time ago, that hesitation itself was dangerous. Jung, pronounced Jung, not the way most men say it, which tells you something about how few people actually study him rather than quote him, called this the shadow. The parts of yourself you refuse to look at directly don't disappear. They simply run your life from behind the curtain instead, making your decisions while you take credit for choices you never actually consciously made. You have not been kind to the people using you. You have been afraid of them. And somewhere, underneath the fear, is a boy who learned that being needed was safer than being seen. He's still making your decisions. Which means it's time we looked at exactly how he's being manipulated into staying quiet. Lesson 3. How guilt is manufactured, not felt. Here is something almost no one will tell you plainly: guilt is not always a signal that you did something wrong. Sometimes it's a tool, used skillfully, sometimes even unconsciously, by people who have learned that your discomfort is more reliable than any argument they could make. Watch for the pattern. You set a boundary, however small, and suddenly you're the villain of a story you didn't write. Suddenly you're different lately. Suddenly there's a sigh, a silence, a comment dropped just casually enough that you can't call it out without sounding paranoid, but pointed enough that you feel it land exactly where it was aimed. This is not always cruelty. Sometimes it's simply a person who has never had to develop any other tool, because guilt has worked on you every single time they've reached for it. You taught them this works. Not because you're foolish, because you were taught, long before they ever met you, that your comfort matters less than everyone else's. Notice the specific shape it takes. It's rarely a direct request anymore. Direct requests you might actually evaluate honestly. It's the mention, dropped almost carelessly, of how hard things have been for them. It's the comparison to someone else who would never treat me this way. It's the silence that lasts exactly long enough to make you start rehearsing apologies for a boundary you haven't even fully stated yet. None of this requires conscious calculation on their part. It only requires that it has worked on you before, and that you have never once let it fail. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. But there's a darker version of that warning for a man in your position. You suffer more from the guilt you manufacture for yourself, anticipating their disappointment, than you would ever suffer from the disappointment itself, if you simply let it exist without rushing to fix it. Let that sit for a moment, because it matters more than it sounds like it does. Their disappointment is not an emergency. It never was. You just never gave yourself permission to find that out. If you just recognized someone specific doing exactly what I described, the sigh, the silence, the guilt dropped like a stone into a still pond, comment, "I taught them this works," below. That's not shame. That's the first honest sentence you've said about this in a long time. There's one more layer to this worth naming before we move on, because it's the layer that keeps good men trapped the longest. The people who use guilt against you are rarely villains in the story they're telling themselves. Most of them genuinely believe they deserve what they're asking for. That's what makes this so difficult to untangle. You're not defending yourself against malice most of the time. You're defending yourself against someone's total, sincere conviction that your discomfort is simply the cost of their comfort, a cost they've never had to question because you've never made them question it. This doesn't mean you owe them an apology for finally noticing. It means the fight you're having isn't really with them at all. It's with a belief they've carried for years, one you have no obligation to keep funding just because they've never examined it. Lesson 4. What Marcus Aurelius owed no one. Picture him for a moment, not as a statue, not as a name on a book cover men buy but rarely finish. Picture an actual man, exhausted, ruling an empire that never stopped asking things of him, surrounded from morning to night by people who needed something from the most powerful man they would ever meet. He wrote, in the privacy of his own tent, that people would try to make claims on his time, his energy, his goodwill, and that none of those claims were automatically valid simply because someone made them forcefully enough, or sadly enough, or persistently enough. This is a man who commanded legions, who had more legitimate claims on his time than any of us will ever face. And still, he understood something you were never taught, that duty is not the same as unlimited availability. That being a good man does not require you to say yes to every version of need that walks toward you. He gave enormously, by every account we have of his life. But he gave from discipline, not from fear of disappointing anyone who asked. That distinction is the entire lesson. Consider what his days actually looked like: petitioners at dawn, senators demanding decisions before noon, letters from provinces he would never visit, each one carrying a version of the same message: give me your time, your resources, your attention, or something will go wrong that will be your fault. A lesser man would have drowned in that, saying yes to every claim simply to make the asking stop. Marcus Aurelius did not drown, not because he cared less than you do, but because he had already done the internal work of separating a legitimate duty from a demand dressed up as one. You have been operating as though every request is a moral test, as though refusing makes you less of a man, less loyal, less good. The emperor did not operate this way. And if the weight of an empire didn't require him to say yes to everyone, the weight of one difficult relationship does not require it of you either. You thought duty meant never disappointing anyone. Until life taught you duty means choosing, deliberately, who deserves what you have left to give. Lesson 5. The difference between sacrifice and self-abandonment. This is the lesson most men skip past too quickly, because on the surface it sounds like permission to become cold, and that was never the point. Sacrifice is a choice made from strength. You know exactly what it's costing you, and you choose it anyway, with clear eyes, because the person or the purpose is worth that cost. A father working himself exhausted for his children is making a sacrifice. He knows the price. He's not confused about it. Self-abandonment wears the same clothes but comes from somewhere entirely different. It isn't chosen from strength, it's extracted through fear, guilt, or an old wound that never healed. You're not clear-eyed about the cost, because you've spent so long avoiding looking at it directly that you've lost track of how much you've actually paid. Here is how you tell the difference, and I want you to actually use this the next time you feel that familiar exhaustion after giving something away again. Ask yourself, if I said no right now, would I feel guilty, or would I feel afraid? Guilt can be examined and often dismissed once you look at it honestly. Fear is older, and it doesn't respond to logic, it responds only to being faced directly, which is exactly what you've spent years avoiding. Think of the money you've lent that you knew, even as you handed it over, would never be repaid, not because you were told it wouldn't be, but because some quiet, reliable part of you already understood the pattern before it repeated itself again. That wasn't generosity making the decision. That was the same old fear, still convinced that saying no would cost you something larger than the money ever did. The well doesn't know the difference between sacrifice and self-abandonment. It simply keeps giving, either way, until it's empty. Only you can tell the difference, because only you know whether you're choosing this, or whether you're still that boy, still afraid of what happens if he finally says no. Not because giving is weakness, but because giving without knowing why you're giving is how strong men disappear one favor at a time. If you just realized how much of what you've given wasn't sacrifice at all, comment, "I know the difference now," below. Let me tell you what this actually looks like, in a life, over years, because I don't want this to stay abstract for you. It looks like a man in his 30s or 40s who built a reputation as the reliable one, the brother who always drives, the friend who always lends, the son who always calls back within the hour no matter what he was in the middle of. From the outside, this looks like strength. People describe him with words like solid, dependable, a good man. And privately, quietly, in the moments no one else witnesses, he is running on fumes he has stopped even noticing are fumes, because exhaustion became his baseline so long ago he mistook it for personality. He does not resent the people he gives to. Not consciously. What he feels instead is a low, constant hum of something he can't quite name, a tiredness that sleep doesn't touch, a quiet flatness in moments that should feel like joy. He assumes this is just what being an adult feels like. It isn't. It's the specific exhaustion of a well that has never once been allowed to simply refill, because refilling would require stopping, and stopping has never once felt safe to him. If any part of that just described something closer to your own life than you expected it to, sit with that for a moment instead of rushing past it. This is not a flaw in your character. It's a pattern you can still interrupt, tonight, starting with the very next lesson. Lesson 6. Silence as the first boundary. Most men think a boundary has to be announced, a speech, a confrontation, a dramatic conversation where you finally say your piece and everyone understands. That's rarely how real boundaries work, and waiting for that moment is often just another way of avoiding the smaller, quieter action that actually protects you. The first boundary is almost always silence. Not the silence of punishment, the silence of simply no longer narrating your exhaustion, your availability, your yes before anyone's even asked the question. You do not owe an explanation for every reduction in what you give. You do not need to announce that you're pulling back. You simply do, quietly, consistently, and you let your actions communicate what your mouth has always been too afraid to say directly. This might look as small as not answering the text within your usual 60 seconds. It might look like letting a call go to voicemail once, just once, instead of dropping whatever you were doing the instant your phone lit up with that familiar name. Nothing dramatic. No announcement. Just a small, deliberate gap where your automatic yes used to live, and the discomfort of leaving that gap open is the entire exercise. Pythagoras made his students sit in silence for years before he allowed them to speak in his presence, because he understood something true about restraint. A mind that has never practiced holding its tongue has never practiced holding itself together either. The next time the familiar request comes, the one you always say yes to before you've even finished reading it, try this instead. Let there be a pause. A day, even. Let the silence do what your explanation never could. Let them sit, for once, in the same uncertainty you've been sitting in for years. That discomfort you'll feel in the pause is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's withdrawal. The same as any dependency loosening its grip. It passes. What replaces it is a steadiness no explanation could ever have given you. Lesson 7. Why users can only take what you keep offering. This is the lesson that will feel the least comfortable, because it removes the last place you've been hiding, the belief that this is something being done to you, rather than something you are still, quietly, actively participating in. Epictetus again, because this is the exact center of his entire philosophy, you cannot control what people attempt to take from you. You can only control what you continue to place within their reach. The well does not choose who lowers a bucket into it. But you are not a well. You are a man, with hands, with a voice, with the ability to build a wall around what's left before it's gone entirely. The well is a metaphor precisely because it has no agency, and the moment you understand that you do have agency, the metaphor stops being an excuse and starts being an indictment. Every time you say, "That's just how they are," you are handing them a permission slip you could revoke at any moment, and choosing not to. Notice how often that phrase does exactly this job for you. That's just how my mother is. That's just how he's always been. Each time you say it, you're not describing them, you're excusing yourself from the one action that was always available to you, changing what you allow within reach of their hands. The sentence sounds like acceptance. It's actually a way of avoiding the harder sentence underneath it, the one that starts with, "I keep." This is not about being cold to the people around you. It's about finally accepting a truth that will change more in your life than almost anything else in this video. No one takes what isn't within reach. You control what's within reach. You always have. You thought they were the ones doing this to you. Until life taught you that you were the one still lowering the bucket. Lesson 8. Becoming ungrabbable. There is a specific kind of man other people cannot casually use, and it has nothing to do with cruelty, coldness, or walls built so high that nothing good can get through either. It has to do with unpredictability of access, the simple, quiet fact that his time and energy are no longer assumed to be available by default. This man doesn't announce his boundaries with anger. He doesn't need to. People learn them the way you learn the shape of a locked door, not through explanation, but through repeated, calm, consistent experience. Becoming ungrabbable starts small. It starts with the pause we talked about earlier. It starts with one honest no, delivered without over-explaining, without apologizing 3 times for a feeling you're entitled to have. It starts with noticing the specific physical sensation in your body when someone is about to ask you for something you don't actually want to give, and trusting that sensation instead of overriding it out of habit. This will cost you something at first. Some people, the ones who valued you specifically for your bottomless availability, will pull away when they discover you have a bottom after all. Let them. That's not loss. That's information you needed and never had before, about who was actually here for you, and who was only ever here for what you provided. You'll notice it almost immediately, the first time you say no without an elaborate excuse attached. Someone in your life will react like you've done something wrong, not because you have, but because the rules of the relationship were built on your predictability, and predictability is exactly what you just stopped supplying. Sit with that reaction instead of rushing to fix it. Their discomfort is information. It is not, and was never, your emergency to solve. The men who remain, after this shift, are the ones who were never using you in the first place. You are being forged right now, in every small no you practice, into someone rare. And what is rare was never manufactured to be rare. It's rare because so few men are willing to feel that discomfort in the pause, and stay in it anyway, instead of rushing to fill it with another yes. There is a particular kind of respect that only gets earned this way, and no amount of generosity can substitute for it. People do not, in the end, value most highly the man who gives them everything. They value the man whose yes actually means something, because they know his no is real. You have spent years making your yes worthless by handing it out to everyone, automatically, regardless of whether it cost you anything. The moment your no becomes real, your yes becomes valuable for the first time in your adult life, and that shift changes how people treat you far more than any amount of giving ever did. If you're building that man right now, even if it's just a decision, not yet an action, comment, "I am not available for use," below. Let it be a marker you can return to. Lesson 9. Sovereignty over guilt. This is the final law, and it is the one that makes everything before it permanent instead of temporary. Sovereignty means this: you can feel guilt, fully, without obeying it. Guilt is not a command. It is a sensation, old and familiar, often inherited from a version of you who had good reason to fear disappointing people, back when you were smaller and had less power over your own life than you do now. You are not that boy anymore. But guilt doesn't know that unless you teach it, slowly, through repeated proof, through choosing the boundary anyway, even while the old, familiar dread is screaming that something terrible is about to happen. Nothing terrible happens. That's the secret almost no one tells you, because almost no one has actually tested it enough times to know. The relationship that couldn't survive one honest no was never built on anything solid enough to be worth grieving in the first place. This is the test you've been avoiding your entire adult life, dressed up as 100 smaller avoidances, the calls you answer instantly, the favors you never question, the exhaustion you swallow because voicing it feels more dangerous than carrying it. Every one of those was the same test, wearing a different face. And every time you passed it by giving in, you taught yourself the same lesson all over again, that you are only as safe as you are useful. Tonight, for the first time, you get to fail that test on purpose, and discover that failing it doesn't end anything except the pattern. The sovereign man does not become cold to the people around him. He simply stops mistaking his discomfort for evidence that he's done something wrong. He gives, still, generously, even, but from a place of choice rather than fear, which is the entire difference this video has been circling since the first line. You began this by hearing that someone is using you, and knowing, immediately, exactly who. You ended understanding that the person who needed to change first was never them. It was the well that never once considered it was allowed to have walls. There will be a moment, soon, when the familiar request arrives again, the one you've said yes to 100 times before you had the words for any of this. And in that moment, you'll be handed the same choice you've faced 1,000 times without recognizing it as a choice at all. Give again, and confirm that nothing here actually changed you. Or pause, just pause, and prove, to no one but yourself, that it did. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and still had to relearn this discipline daily, in the privacy of his own tent, with nothing but a notebook and the willingness to write the harder truth down instead of the comfortable lie. If he had to practice it daily, so will you. But every time you choose the pause over the automatic yes, the boundary over the guilt, the wall over the endless giving, you are not becoming someone colder. You are becoming someone with something left to give tomorrow. Somewhere out there is a version of you who never learns this, who keeps lowering the bucket for the rest of his life, wondering, quietly, why he feels emptier every year despite giving everything he has. He'll tell himself it's just who he is. He'll tell himself good men give without keeping score. He'll say all of this while quietly resenting people he never once told the truth to, and he'll call that resentment something else, because looking at it honestly would mean admitting the well was allowed to have walls the entire time. You are not required to become that man. Everything in this video was the exit from that path, laid out plainly, waiting only for you to walk it. Tonight, before you close this video, do one thing. Just one. Think of the name that arrived in your head before you'd even finished the first line. And the next time they ask, pause, before you answer. Not out of spite. Out of respect for the well you are finally allowed to protect. Let the discomfort of that pause sit there, unresolved, without rushing to smooth it over the way you always have. That discomfort is not your enemy. It is the exact place where the man who gave everything away finally learns where to stop. If you're taking that pause tonight, if you're done lowering the bucket for someone who's never once asked if it was running dry, comment, I choose what's left, below. Let it be the last thing you type tonight, instead of the yes you almost gave away for free. And if this reached the part of you that's been waiting to hear it, subscribe to my Stoic code. Because the next law you learn might be the one that finally lets the well fill back up.